Korean Mafia boss humiliates black waitress in Korean. He froze when she answered in his mother tongue. He noticed her name tag first. Amara. Then his eyes traveled to her dark skin, and the smirk spread across his face like poison. To Kwang, the notorious head of the Baeko crime syndicate, the black waitress standing before his table at Manhattan's exclusive Hansong restaurant was nothing more than tonight's entertainment, a way to remind his associates that even in America, he controlled every room he entered. The elaborate neck tattoo crawling from beneath his crisp white collar told one story. The tailored navy suit told another. But his cold, calculating eyes told the truth. This was a man who built an empire on making others feel small. Tonight, he decided Amara would be his victim. And he had no idea that Amara Williams wasn't just serving tables to make ends meet. He didn't know about the State Department credentials gathering dust in her apartment, or the 5 languages she spoke fluently, or the East Asian security briefings she used to lead before one disastrous leak destroyed her career. He couldn't have known that his attempt to humiliate her in rapid-fire Busan dialect, laced with criminal slang and venomous racial slurs, would not only backfire spectacularly, but would set in motion the very investigation that would topple everything he'd built. Because 3 tables away, a legendary retired general was watching, and he recognized brilliance when he saw it, even when it was hiding behind a server's polite smile. This is the story of how arrogance crossed the wrong woman. And if you enjoy stories of unexpected comeuppance, hit that like button and subscribe to see more powerful comebacks like this one. The crystal chandeliers of Hansong cast a warm glow over white tablecloths and gleaming silverware, but Amara felt none of that warmth. She moved through the dining room with practiced grace, her hands steady as she balanced a tray of Seoul-style short ribs, her expression the perfect mask of professional attentiveness. To the clientele, hedge fund managers, diplomats, old money families who'd been coming here since the restaurant opened 15 years ago, she was invisible. Just another well-trained server in a crisp black vest and white-collared shirt, hair pulled back in a tight professional bun. But invisibility was survival now, and survival was all that mattered. She delivered the short ribs to table 12, accepted their barely there nod of acknowledgement, and retreated to the server station. Through the kitchen's round window, she could see the controlled chaos of the line cooks, hear the rapid-fire Korean instructions from Chef Min. 3 years ago, she would have been translating those same urgent commands in a different context, in briefing rooms with maps spread across mahogany tables, with generals and analysts hanging on her every word. 3 years ago, she had been someone else entirely. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out during a brief lull, saw her brother Marcus's text. Mom's appointment moved to Tuesday. They want to run more tests. Says not to worry, but you know how she is. Amara closed her eyes for just a second. More tests meant more bills. More bills meant more double shifts. More nights smiling politely while being treated like furniture. Amara, table 6 needs water, called Jin, the floor manager, and she was moving again, pitcher in hand, mask firmly back in place. She'd been doing this for 18 months now. 18 months since the Security Clearance Review Board had revoked her credentials. 18 months since the Washington Post had run that story. State Department analyst linked to intelligence leak. Her name buried in paragraph 7, but visible enough to end everything. It didn't matter that she hadn't been the leak. It didn't matter that she'd spent 6 years building expertise that had helped prevent God knows how many international incidents. One compromised report, one investigation, and suddenly Amara Williams was untouchable. Now, the PhD from Georgetown meant nothing when potential security risk followed your name. So now she poured water and recited specials and smiled as men in $1,000 suits snapped their fingers at her. She sent money to her mother in Baltimore for cancer treatments that insurance barely covered. She paid her brother's tuition at Howard because he deserved better than she'd gotten. And late at night, in her cramped studio in Queens, she tried not to think about the career she'd loved, the work that had made her feel like she was making a difference. The restaurant door opened at 8:15 and Amara felt it before she saw it. A shift in the room's energy, like a cold front moving in. She glanced up from the wine she was pouring and saw Jin's expression change, watched him straighten his tie with suddenly nervous hands. The three men had entered. The one in front moved with the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. His sharp-featured face set in an expression of casual superiority. His hair was styled in that modern cut, shaved tight on the sides, longer on top. The navy suit probably cost more than Amara made in 3 months, but it was the tattoo that caught her attention. Intricate black ink crawling up his neck from beneath his collar, the kind of tattoo that meant something specific in certain circles she used to study. Behind him, 2 associates in equally expensive dark suits flanked him like guards. Their eyes swept the room in a way that was too practiced, too alert. This wasn't social dining, this was a display of power. Chef Min appeared from the kitchen, which was unusual. Now he bowed deeply, deeper than Amara had ever seen him bow, and personally escorted the 3 men to the corner table, the best table, the one that was supposedly booked tonight. She watched as the reservation holders were quietly, apologetically relocated to the bar area. "Who is that?" Amara whispered to Jin when he passed her station. Jin's voice was low, tight. "Kwang, do not make eye contact. Do not engage unless he speaks to you first. Be perfect." That last part felt like a warning. She had heard whispers about Kwang in the break room. The other servers spoke in hushed tones about the man who owned half the Korean businesses in Manhattan, whose associates moved through the restaurant like they owned it, because in many ways they did. "Protection money," her co-worker Soo-jin had murmured once. Hansang paid, like everyone else paid. But Amara knew more than whispers. She'd seen intelligence reports with names like his in her old life. Organized crime with roots in Busan, expanding operations into New York, using legitimate businesses as fronts, the Beho Syndicate, dangerous people hiding behind expensive suits and political connections. She should keep her head down, pour the water, take the order, be invisible. But when Jin assigned her to table 14, Kwang's table, her pulse quickened with something that wasn't quite fear. It was closer to that old feeling, the one she used to get before a difficult briefing, the sharp edge of challenge. Amara approached the table with her tray, her expression neutral and professional. She could hear them laughing in Korean, their conversation flowing easily, something about a shipment, about timing. Words that confirmed what she already suspected. "Good evening, gentlemen," she said, her voice even. "My name is Amara, and I'll be taking care of you tonight. Can I start you with something to drink?" Kwang looked up at her, and she saw his eyes travel to her name tag, then to her face, then back to the name tag. The smirk started slow, spreading like he'd just been handed an unexpected gift. "Amara," he repeated, drawing out each syllable mockingly. His English was perfect, barely accented. "That's an interesting name. African?" "It means grace," she replied, keeping her tone polite. Professional, even though she could already feel where this was going. "Grace," he echoed, and his associates chuckled. How appropriate for a server. She pulled out her pad, pen ready. "What can I get you to drink?" But Kwang wasn't done studying her, and his eyes held that cold assessment she'd seen before in men who viewed other people as objects, as tools, as entertainment. He glanced at his associates, said something quick in Korean that made them laugh, something crude about Americans, about diversity hires. She didn't react. Her face remained pleasantly blank. "We'll have the YO41, Kwang said, naming a premium Korean spirit that cost $200 a bottle. and bring us some pajon to start." Amara nodded, made note, started to turn away. "Wait!" She stopped, turned back. Kwang was leaning back in his chair now, completely at ease, the way predators look when they're playing with prey. The tattoo on his neck seemed to pulse in the chandelier light. She could make out the pattern now, a tiger's face, teeth bared. "You know what pajon is?" he asked, or his tone dripping with condescension. "Korean scallion pancake," she replied evenly. "Oh, she knows." One of the associates laughed, slapping the table. "The American knows pajeon." Kwang's smirk widened. "What about galbi? Do you know galbi?" "Marinated short ribs. Traditionally Korean-style barbecue." He leaned forward now, elbows on the table, eyes locked on hers. This was a test, she realized. Or no, not a test. This was a game. He was toying with her, seeing how far he could push before she broke. "Smart girl," he said, the words somehow making smart sound like an insult. "You study hard for this job? Learn all the Korean words?" The two associates were grinning now, anticipating something. She could feel the other diners at nearby tables pretending not to watch, could sense Jin hovering nervously near the kitchen. And Amara kept her expression neutral. "I'll get your drinks." "No, wait. Kwang held up a hand. "I'm impressed, really. A Black American girl who knows Korean food, that's, what do they call it? Diversity." He glanced at his friends, switching to Korean. "Look at her trying so hard. Probably thinks she's educated." One of the associates responded in Korean. "Maybe she needs a real education." They laughed. Kwang's eyes never left Amara's face, watching for a reaction. She gave him none. Just stood there, pen poised above her order pad, waiting. But inside, something was shifting. A memory surfacing from 3 years ago, from a different life. She'd been sitting in a briefing room in Foggy Bottom, presenting analysis on transnational organized crime networks. There'd been a photo on the screen, a younger man with a neck tattoo, and identified as a rising enforcer in the Baeko organization, suspected of running protection rackets in Koreatown, connected to cargo theft operations at the port of Newark. That man had been named Kwang Yun-ho, and now he was sitting in front of her, deciding that she would be tonight's entertainment. "You know what?" Kwang leaned back again, switching back to English. "I'm going to test your Korean food knowledge. Let's see how smart you really are." He glanced at his associates, then back to Amara. "I want something special tonight, something authentic. Not this American-Korean fusion nonsense." He paused, savoring the moment. And then he switched. His voice changed completely, dropping into rapid-fire Korean, but not the standard Seoul dialect. This was Busan Saturi, the regional dialect from South Korea's second-largest city. Rougher and faster, filled with the harsh consonants and dropped syllables that made it nearly incomprehensible to outsiders. "Myeongchonghan gyejiba," he started, the insult delivered with casual venom. "Stupid bitch." "Jinja myeongge hue gajowa, Busan jiral style. Bring me real sea squirt sashimi, Busan style. 그리고 소주 말고 막걸리, 전통으로. 이 검둥이가 뭔 소린지 알아듣겠어?" "And 막걸리, not soju, traditional style. Think this black girl understands anything I'm saying?" He added more, the words tumbling out in that aggressive Busan rhythm, laced with criminal slang, terms she recognized from surveillance transcripts, from reports on gang communications. He was ordering food, yes, but he was also testing her, mocking her, absolutely certain she was lost. He threw in a particularly vile phrase about her appearance, about what black women were supposedly good for, and his associates erupted in laughter. The entire table conversation had shifted to Korean now, rapid-fire and crude, as if she'd simply stopped existing as a person and became just a target for their amusement. Amara stood there, pen still poised. 3 seconds of absolute silence from her. In her mind, she was calculating. She was weighing 18 months of bills paid, of her mother's treatment, of her brother's tuition. She was weighing the job she couldn't afford to lose against the dignity she'd already sacrificed so many times. She was weighing invisibility against the person she used to be, the person who'd spent 6 years becoming fluent in 5 languages, who'd earned a master's degree in East Asian security studies, then who'd once sat across from a South Korean intelligence liaison and discussed the evolution of organized crime networks in Busan Saturi, because that's what the job required. Kwang was grinning now, turning to his associates, starting to say something else in Korean about how the dumb American was just standing there, completely lost. And Amara made her choice. She looked directly into Kwang's eyes, not down, not away, but straight into them. And when she spoke, her voice was calm, clear, and absolutely fluent in the exact Busan dialect he'd been using. 면조, she began. 명계는 지금 제철이 아닙니다. First, Sea Squirt isn't in season right now. 그리고 부산 지랄 스타일이라는 건 없습니다. 회무침이나 초장에 찍어 먹는 거죠. And there's no such thing as Busan style for that dish. It's either spicy seasoned or with vinegar sauce. She paused, letting that sink in, watching the color drain from Kwang's face. Then she continued, her tone professional but with an edge that cut like glass. 그리고 손님, and sir, 진짜 부산 양반이었으면 멍게회 주문할 때 그런 말 안 쓰실 텐데. If you were really from Busan upper society, you wouldn't use that kind of language when ordering it. The silence that followed was absolute. Kwang's smirk had vanished. His associates had stopped mid-laugh, their expressions frozen somewhere between confusion and shock. The entire table stared at her as if she'd just sprouted wings, but Amara wasn't finished. She shifted slightly, her posture still professional, and added in the same dialect. 좀 더 제대로 된 메뉴를 추천해 드릴까요? 아니면 주방장님께 직접 여쭤볼까요? Would you like me to recommend something more appropriate? Or should I ask the chef directly for you? And then, because she couldn't quite help herself, because she'd spent 18 months being invisible and something in her had finally broken free. 배고파 분들은 보통 좀 더 격식을 차리시던데요? I've noticed people from the Beko organization usually have more class. She just told him, in his own dialect, that she knew exactly who he was. The moment stretched out. Kwang's face had gone from pale to flushed, his jaw clenched so tight she could see the muscle jumping. His hand gripped the table edge, knuckles white. One of his associates muttered something that sounded like a curse. Then Kwang exploded. He stood so abruptly his chair scraped backwards with a screech that made everyone in the restaurant turn. 누구 이 개집을 여기 배정한 거야? His voice was loud now, dropping even deeper into Busan slang, shouting in Korean, "Get your manager! Get him now! Who put this bitch at my table?" Jin was already rushing over, his face panicked. Other servers backed away. The entire restaurant had gone silent, all pretense of not watching abandoned. Kwang switched to English, pointing at Amara, his voice shaking with rage. "This woman is fired, you understand, fired. I don't care who she thinks she is. I don't care what she knows. She's done." Chef Min had emerged from the kitchen, and now he stood beside Jin, both of them looking terrified. "Mr. Kwang," Chef Min began, hands placating. "Please, I apologize. She spoke to me like... Kwang seemed unable to finish the sentence, fury choking his words. He looked at Amara, really looked at her now, and she saw something in his eyes beyond anger. She saw fear, because she'd revealed what she knew about his dialect, about his organization, and about who he really was beneath the expensive suit. She'd made him visible in the same way he'd tried to make her invisible. "To my office," Jin said quietly to Amara, his voice strained. "Now." Amara set down her order pad on the nearest table. Her hands were steady. Inside, her heart was racing, but outwardly she maintained that same composed grace. She'd just lost her job. She'd just destroyed the income keeping her mother in treatment, keeping Marcus in school. But God, it had felt good. As she walked toward the office, she caught a glimpse of another table. An elderly man sitting alone, distinguished-looking in a simple but well-cut suit. He'd been there all evening, barely noticed, just another wealthy diner in a restaurant full of them. But he was watching her now with an expression she couldn't quite read. Interest, maybe. Or recognition. And as Amara disappeared through the door to the back offices, she didn't see the elderly man pull out his phone. Didn't see him make a call, his voice low and urgent. Didn't know that General Park Ji-hoon, retired director of South Korean National Intelligence, had just witnessed something he thought he'd never see again. A brilliance he'd once seen in a briefing room in Washington, before the world had tried to bury it. Jin's office was barely large enough for the desk and 2 chairs crammed inside. Amara sat in one of them, her hands folded in her lap, listening to the muffled shouting from the dining room. Kwang's voice carried even through the walls, his fury unabated. She heard crashes, glasses, maybe plates, and Chef Min's desperate attempts at appeasement. She'd blown it, completely and spectacularly. In 2 minutes of spoken Korean, she destroyed 18 months of careful survival. Her phone buzzed. Marcus again. Mom's asking about next month's payment. Should I tell her it's covered? Amara closed her eyes. She couldn't answer that now. Couldn't tell him that she'd just sacrificed their stability for a moment of pride. The door opened. She expected Jin, maybe Chef Min, possibly even the owner, ready to escort her out immediately. Instead, the elderly man from table 9 entered. He was shorter than she'd realized, maybe 5'7", with silver hair and deep-set eyes that held a sharpness that belied his age. His suit was expensive but understated, tailored but not flashy. He moved with the careful precision of someone whose body had been trained for something other than boardrooms. "Miss Williams," he said, and his English carried only the faintest Korean accent. "My name is Park Ji-hoon." He said it like she should know the name, and somewhere in the back of her mind she did. A flicker of recognition from briefings long ago, from files she'd read about South Korean intelligence operations. "General Park," she said slowly, the pieces clicking into place. "Retired NIS director." A small smile. "You remember?" "Good." He sat in the chair beside her, not behind the desk, an equal, not an authority figure. "I saw what you did out there." "I lost my temper," Amara said quietly. "I lost my job." "You revealed yourself," he corrected. "There's a difference." He studied her face. 6 years ago, I attended a briefing at the State Department. You were the analyst who presented on maritime trafficking routes through Busan. Your Korean was flawless. Your analysis was better. I asked your supervisor afterward who you were. Amara stared at him. "I don't remember you being there." "I was in the back, observing." He leaned forward slightly. "When I heard about what happened to you, the security investigation, the blacklisting, I thought it was a waste. A brilliant mind destroyed by bureaucratic cowardice. They said I was a risk." "They said you were convenient," he countered. "Someone had to take the fall. You were young, talented, but not yet indispensable. So they made you disappear." His eyes hardened. "I've seen it before. Good people sacrifice to protect institutional reputations." The shouting had stopped outside. Amara heard Jin's voice pleading, and then footsteps, heavy, angry, moving toward the exit. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. "Because I make it my business to know who operates in my community," General Park said. "Kwang Yun-ho is not just a restaurant patron. He runs protection rackets, coordinates cargo theft, launders money through legitimate businesses. For 3 years, I've been gathering evidence, working with the FBI's organized crime unit. but men like Kwang are careful. They insulate themselves. He paused, and his smile returned, sharper this time. Until tonight, when he lost his temper in front of a witness who speaks his dialect and understands his references. Who knows exactly what Bagopa means? Baco organization. Who can testify not just about what he said, but about the implications of how he said it? Amara's pulse quickened. You want me to testify against him? I want to offer you something better than testimony, General Park said. And he pulled a card from his pocket, set it on the desk between them. The State Department has a new special liaison position, Joint Task Force on Transnational Organized Crime. They need someone with your expertise, your language skills, and your unique understanding of how these networks operate. She picked up the card. It was heavy stock, embossed. A name she didn't recognize, but a title she did. Deputy Assistant Secretary for International Law Enforcement. They blacklisted me, she said. Why would they hire me back? Because I recommended you. His voice was firm. Because the investigation that destroyed your career was reopened 6 months ago and quietly concluded. The actual leak was identified. A contractor with gambling debts. Your name is clear, Ms. Williams. It's been clear. They just never bothered to tell you. The words hit her like a physical blow. Clear. For 6 months she'd been clear, and no one had thought to inform her. No apology, no correction, just silence, while she served appetizers to people who treated her like furniture. The position comes with full security clearance reinstatement, General Park continued, diplomatic credentials, and a salary that will cover your mother's treatment and your brother's education without requiring you to work double shifts. It was too much. Too fast. Amara set the card down, her hands suddenly shaking. Why? She whispered. Why would you do this for me? General Park stood, straightened his jacket. Because talent like yours shouldn't be wasted serving galbi to criminals. And because Kwang made a mistake tonight, he revealed himself to the one person in this restaurant who could truly hurt him. He moved toward the door, then paused. The position starts in 2 weeks. If you're interested, call that number tomorrow. In the meantime, you should probably avoid going back to the dining room. He left as quietly as he'd entered. Amara sat there for a long moment staring at the card. Then she picked up her phone and texted Marcus. Tell Mom it's covered. Everything's covered. 4 months later, Kwang Yun-ho sat in an interview room at the Korean consulate, his expensive lawyer beside him, his expression carefully neutral. They'd brought him in on a visa technicality, some paperwork issue that his lawyer insisted would be resolved within the hour. But when the door opened, it wasn't a consulate bureaucrat who entered. It was Amara. She wore a charcoal suit now, tailored and professional. Her hair was still pulled back, but looser, more confident. An ID badge hung around her neck. U.S. Department of State, Special Liaison for International Law Enforcement. Behind her came 2 FBI agents, and a representative from the South Korean NIS. Kwang's face went white. Mr. Kwang, Amara said in perfect English, setting down a thick folder on the table between them. Thank you for coming in today. We have some questions about your business operations. She sat across from him, opened the folder. Inside were photos, surveillance images of cargo containers at the port of Newark, financial records, transcripts of phone conversations, all in Korean, all damning. Kwang started, but his lawyer put a hand on his arm. Amara switched to Korean, her voice calm and precise. Let me save us some time. We have evidence of protection racket operations at 17 businesses in Manhattan and Queens. We have customs records showing irregularities in your import company's shipping manifests. We have testimony from 3 individuals in your organization who've agreed to cooperate. She looked up, met his eyes directly. And we have you, on camera and audio recording, discussing illegal activities in what you thought was private conversation at Hansung Restaurant 4 months ago. Understanding dawned on Kwang's face, followed immediately by rage, then fear. You, he breathed. The waitress. Special Liaison Williams, she corrected. And yes, me. His lawyer was whispering urgently in his ear now. Nay, but Kwang seemed unable to look away from Amara. The woman he'd tried to humiliate, tried to make invisible, now sat across from him with the full power of 2 governments behind her. You have 2 options, Amara continued in Korean. You can cooperate with our investigation into the Baco organization's U.S. operations, or you can face prosecution on 18 federal counts, plus whatever charges the Korean government wants to pursue regarding your activities in Seoul. She leaned forward slightly. I should mention, your protection has evaporated. The people you thought were insulating you have been arrested. The officials you thought were bought have been replaced. You're alone now, Mr. Kwang, just like you tried to make me feel. The silence stretched out. Outside the interview room through the one-way glass, the General Park watched with satisfaction. Beside him, an FBI supervisor nodded approvingly. Finally, Kwang's lawyer spoke. We'd like to discuss terms of cooperation. Amara nodded, pulled out a legal pad. Smart choice. Let's start with your operations in Busan. I want names, locations, financial structures. She clicked her pen. And Mr. Kwang, I want you to tell me everything in your native dialect, the real one, because we both know you understand the importance of speaking clearly. His hands shook as he began to talk. 6 months after that, Amara stood in her mother's hospital room in Baltimore. The latest scans were clear. The treatment had worked. Her mother sat up in bed, looking stronger than she had in 2 years, while Marcus lounged in the visitor's chair, showing her photos from his study abroad program in Seoul. Oh, how's the new job? Her mother asked, her voice warm with pride. Busy, Amara said, smiling. Important, the kind of work I was meant to do. Her phone buzzed. A message from General Park. Kwang's testimony led to 7 more arrests. Well done, she typed back. Thank you for everything. His response came quickly. You did the hard part. You refused to stay invisible. Amara looked out the hospital window at the Baltimore skyline, thinking about that night at Hansung, about the moment she'd made a choice between survival and dignity, between silence and truth, about how one decision, one moment of refusing to accept humiliation, had changed everything. Her mother reached for her hand. You look happy, baby. Amara squeezed back. I am. Finally. Because arrogance had crossed the wrong woman, and she'd reminded everyone, including herself, exactly who she was meant to be.